Hello, it's Kenneth from the University Archives here with another video looking at an aspect of the University of Dundee's history. We're proud to be able to say as a university that many of our staff and students have gone on to make an impact in the wider world. And that's certainly true of the subjects of today's video, Walter and Angeline Kamba. Walter Joseph Kamba will be well remembered by anybody who was at the university in the 1970s. He was a lecturer in law between 1969 and 1980. On the right we have his official staff photograph, and on the left is a still I've taken from the 1977 university promotional video, Living and Learning in Tayside. So Walter Kamba had quite a long and interesting life, and I'm going to give you some of the highlights. He was born in 1931 in what was then the British colony of Southern Rhodesia. He went on to attend the University of Cape Town, where he was awarded a Bachelor of Arts degree, followed a few years later by a law degree. He then entered the legal profession in Southern Rhodesia, quickly becoming quite a well-known figure, and he served as part of the Rhodesian delegation to the Federation of Rhodesia and Nyasaland Constitutional Review, which took place in London in 1960. That was also the year he married Angeline. Angeline had been born in 1935 and in 1957 had become only the second woman of African heritage in what was then Southern Rhodesia to obtain a university degree, which she was awarded by the University of South Africa. She later obtained a master's degree in library science from Columbia University. Walter would also go on to obtain his master's from Yale Law School. By the early 60s, the political situation in Rhodesia was deteriorating very badly, and this eventually led to the legal unilateral declaration of independence by the Smith government and the imposition of minority white rule, and Walter effectively became in exile. He eventually came to the United Kingdom, where he took a research post in London. But it was our good fortune in 1969 that Ian Willock, the professor of jurisprudence in Dundee's law school, was able to recruit him to come and teach jurisprudence in Dundee. And he was an immensely popular figure with both staff and students. He was also a very gifted academic, not only in jurisprudence, but in comparative law. He was fairly quickly promoted to senior lecturer and in 1977 became Dean of the Law School, a testament to his abilities. This is one of the few photographs we have of him as Dean. And apologies, it's not a terribly good photograph, but he's on the stage with some of the other deans and university officials at the 1978 graduation. Now, when he started his term as Dean, the law school was still based off campus in Bell Street in Bonner House, which was the old home of the Dundee School of Economics. And it was during his time as Dean that the law school finally moved back onto campus, moving into the building you see here, the Scrimgeour building, the former home of Dundee College of Education. And here we see Walter greeting the Earl of Dundee at the official opening of the building in 1978. I'm also told he was a keen participant in staff-student football matches, and if you speak to anybody who knew him as a student or colleague, the universal opinion was he was a real nice guy. Angeline was also popular. She had joined the university as well, working in our library services, and she was responsible really for building up the law library. Again, she oversaw its move from Bonner House, we see the old law library here, to the new premises in the Scrimgeour building. And this is quite a nice picture we've got of Angeline with Principal Adam Neville and our former rector, Peter Ustinov. Walter, however, was still very interested in Rhodesia and what was going on. This was the time of the Bush War, the time of the nationalist struggle against the Smith government, and he was associated with members of the Patriotic Front, ZANU and ZAPU, including Robert Mugabe. And in 1979, he served as an advisor to Robert Mugabe and the other Patriotic Front leaders at the Lancaster House Conference in London, which led to the creation of the modern Zimbabwe and basically brought Zimbabwe back into the international fold from being a pariah state. And it was while at Dundee he was also working on writing the Zimbabwean constitution, which he played a major role in. It's not surprising that the Zimbabwean government wanted him to come back to his home country to take up an important position, and he was invited and accepted the position of Vice-Chancellor and Principal of what was to now be the University of Zimbabwe, and of course that meant he was the first black African Chancellor of a university in Zimbabwe. Here we see his farewell party in Dundee that was held in 1980. There's a special farewell held for him and Angeline, and I think it's testament to his popularity. Not only was the serving principal Adam Neville there, but the principal who had been appointed him and who he had initially worked with, James Drever, came back to pay tribute to Walter and Angeline. And Angeline herself took an important role as director of the Zimbabwean National Archives. It wasn't the end of the story with Walter in Dundee. He was busy in Zimbabwe. He was building up the University of Zimbabwe, which he did tremendously well. When he started, it had about 1,000 students. By the time he left in 1992, that number had grown up about eight times. It had opened university education to people who wouldn't have normally got it, and he was also taking an interest in university education in other parts of Africa. So it was no surprise when in December 1981, the university made an announcement of who was going to get honorary degrees, and a special ceremony to be held in May 82 to mark the centenary of university education in Dundee, and Walter Kamba was one of those chosen. And he came back, and here we see him getting that well-deserved honorary degree for his work in Dundee, as well as his work on an international scale. Sadly, politics in Zimbabwe didn't develop in the way that Walter would have liked, and he was increasingly concerned about academic freedom. And in 1992, at the University of Zimbabwe's graduation ceremony, he stood up and gave a speech which criticised interference, including government and political interference, in university life, which he saw as a threat to freedom. This was a very brave thing to do because Robert Mugabe, as the university's chancellor, and clearly one of the targets of Walter's speech, was sitting right beside him. And that meant he effectively resigned at that point as vice-chancellor. It wasn't the end of his academic career. He had a visiting professorship at the University of Manitoba, and he went on to become the first dean of the new faculty of law that he helped set up at the University of Namibia. Sadly, he died in 2007 after a long struggle against diabetes. Angeline Kamba died just over a decade later in 2017. She had also had a fairly stellar career, as well as her role at the Zimbabwean National Archives. She served on various international bodies, notably the UNESCO Commission on Culture and Development. I think it's fitting that we remember the Kambas and their achievements, and I'm really proud to say that the University of Dundee's got an association with them. We'd love to hear from any of Walter's students or anybody that worked with Walter and Angeline, has any memories of them. Please do get in touch if you'd like to share them with us. Otherwise, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Stay safe and take care.